Welcome to the history of New York, the forging of an empire, spanning from the pre-1600s to modern day. New York's history is a story of collision, beginning with the Haudenosaunee spiritual bond with the land and the Dutch drive for commerce. New York's early economy was a mix of commerce, liberty, and chains. The Zenger Trial of 1735 planted the seed for the First Amendment, but slavery was deeply entrenched, with thousands of enslaved people in the state by 1790. The census data showed 33% of the population were enslaved. During the Revolutionary War, 1776 to 1783, New York was a strategic prize. After Washington's retreat, New York City became the British military headquarters. Canvas towns became common following the Great Fire of 1776. The displaced poor lived in tents made of sailcloth. The human toll was immense, with thousands displaced or dying on prison ships. The Battle of Oriskany in 1777 was a turning point, halting the British advance. British General Burgoyne surrendered at Saratoga, helped convince the French to join the war. It was also an internal civil war within the Iroquois Confederacy. At Oriskany, neighbors fought neighbors, and former Iroquois allies fought one another in a swampy ravine. It halted the British advance on the Mohawk Valley, leaving deep scars among neighbors who fought on opposing sides. New York's struggle to ratify the Constitution was known as the Ninth Pillar. Anti-Federalists feared a strong central government, while Federalists like Hamilton argued it was essential for commerce. Hamilton, Jay, and Madison wrote the Federalist Papers to persuade New York voters to ratify the proposed U.S. Constitution. New York ratified by a razor-thin margin only after rumors spread that New York City would secede from the state to join the Union independently. The government paid Revolutionary soldiers in scrip for 600 acres of Iroquois land. This mechanism, known as the Military Tract of 1792, forced the Iroquois onto shrinking reservations, making way for white settlement. The Erie Canal continued to transform the state, reducing the cost of transport from Buffalo to New York City drastically. This infrastructure spurred the growth of western cities and cemented New York City's status as the nation's busiest port. The Erie Canal was built in stages, with construction starting July 4, 1817, and the original 363-mile waterway opening in 1825, connecting the Great Lakes to the Atlantic via the Hudson River, transforming New York into a major economic hub and facilitating westward expansion. It was enlarged and modernized several times, notably in the 1830s to 1860s, and again from 1905 to 1918, becoming the New York State barge canal system to accommodate larger traffic. Shipping costs drastically reduced after the completion of the canal, making it economically beneficial to ship goods. The rise of canal cities, towns along the route, including Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo, saw massive, rapid population and industrial growth. Rochester was, at one point, the fastest-growing urban center in America. The canal provided a direct, low-cost route for Midwest agricultural goods, grain and lumber to reach eastern markets, while facilitating the transport of manufactured goods to the frontier. The canal solidified New York as the Empire State and served as a crucial early catalyst for the United States' industrial and commercial growth. New York became known as the Burned-Over District, a laboratory for the perfect society. Various groups like the Shakers, Mormons, Oneida community, and Millerites experimented with new social structures and beliefs. The state was a center for social reform. Frederick Douglass fought for abolition by publishing The North Star. Gerrit Smith gave away 150,000 acres in the Adirondacks to free blacks to grant the voting rights. Simultaneously, the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848 began the fight for suffrage, demanding equal rights for women. Elizabeth Cady Stanton rewrote the Declaration of Independence to say, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." The Civil War was the blood of the empire. New York supplied the most men and money of any state, with over 40,000 deaths. Sickness claimed far more lives than battles. The draft riots, the Conscription Act of 1863, allowed the rich to pay $300 to avoid service in the war and expose deep societal tensions. Over 175,000 African Americans served during the Civil War. The Gilded Age saw New York become an engine of invention. Innovations like the safety elevator, the camera and film, and the sewing machine were integral to the state's transition into an industrial superpower. By the late 1800s, 69 of the country's 100 largest businesses were located in New York. The state had transitioned into an industrial superpower. Corruption flourished with Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall, who stole millions from the public. The New York County courthouse fraud exemplified this theft. Ultimately, the press and cartoons exposed and brought down Tweed. Child labor was a significant cost of progress. Dangerous factory conditions, evidenced by tragic injuries and deaths, spurred the rise of the modern labor movement, with New York City becoming its recognized cradle. Flowed through the Golden Door, fulfilling the dream of welcoming the poor, yet the reality was often harsh. The era ended tragically with the assassination of the president at the Buffalo Fair in 1901. Moving into the 20th century, New York State continued to dominate the world stage. This is a chronicle of the Empire State, marked by resilience, transformation, and identity, from World War I to the collapse of 9/11. In 1917, New York sent approximately 500,000 soldiers to World War I. The 369th Infantry Regiment from Harlem, known as the Harlem Hellfighters, fought segregationist policies, achieving valor without full recognition. The Great Migration brought Southern African Americans to New York, sparking a cultural explosion in Harlem. This era, featuring key figures like Duke Ellington and Langston Hughes, established Harlem as the cultural capital of the African American world. The Roaring Twenties brought social and sporting spectacle. New York women won the right to vote in 1917, preceding the 19th Amendment. New York City became the movie capital. Dream palaces, like the Roxy, seated 6,200 people. Baseball was revolutionized by Babe Ruth, boosting Yankees' attendance and popular culture. Black Tuesday, October 29, 1929, saw the collapse of the world's financial center. The resulting era of despair left 1.5 million New Yorkers unemployed by 1933, representing 25% of the labor force. The Bank of the United States failed, wiping out savings for 500,000 people due to lack of deposit insurance. The New Deal was a series of U.S. federal programs, public work projects, and financial reforms enacted by President Franklin D. Roosevelt between 1933 and 1938. Designed to combat the Great Depression, it focused on the 3 R's: relief for the unemployed, recovery of the economy, and reform of the financial system. New York served as a major integral component of the U.S. arsenal of democracy during World War II, contributing heavily to the industrial and logistical effort that supplied Allied forces. New York City was chosen as the United Nations headquarters, and the mass housing market developed just outside of New York City. The St. Lawrence Seaway opened the continent's interior to trade. The changing face of the economy from manufacturing to service industries and the rise of the new immigrant changed the way New York City looked and functioned. The machinery of democracy and the ideas of checks and balances led New York to become a major voice in how our government works. The events of September 11, 2001, changed New York and the country. The aftermath has altered the way New York and other states function and will forever be a turning point in United States history. New York State has evolved over 2 centuries and is defined not by its geography, but by the resilience of its people.